Good morning. Happy Thursday. Responding to comments, there seem to be general trends. First, let me start with one comment. Only one person made this. Oh my God, you're celebrating someone who killed somebody else getting no jail time? Yeah, I am. See, my job as an attorney is to get the best possible outcome for my client. That's literally my job. That's what I am paid to do. That's why the client gives me money. Now, I was not the attorney of record. I was assisting the attorney of record in this case. But it's still my job to get the best possible outcome for the client. And I am happy when I get my client the best possible outcome. And to sit in judgment on that without knowing any of the underlying facts on the case is kind of preposterous. How do you know if that was a good deal or a bad deal? Well, just to clear the record a little bit, let me give you some basic facts. Number one, the pre-sentence report from probation recommended probation. They did not recommend jail time. They recommended probation. Even if it had gone forward as a felony, they recommended probation, no jail time. The state agreed to the settlement. It was a settlement. A plea deal is a settlement. So the state liked the outcome. The judge accepted the outcome. The victim's family didn't weigh in either way on the outcome. So presumptively, they were okay with the outcome. So who are you to judge? People are stupid. Speaking of stupid people, I see a lot of comments in my last video about Freeman saying that, cops are all bad and it's essentially a death sentence to call the cops on someone. Essentially, you're wishing them dead. Well, let's look at some basic numbers. There's over 10 million arrests every year. Those are arrests. Those aren't even like just traffic stops. Those aren't anything like detentions, like, a stop and frisk situation. Those are actual arrests where people get put in handcuffs and brought to jail or issued a citation or summons or whatever you want to call it in your state. Those are arrests. So there's a lot more than 10 million every year of actual encounters with the police where they decide not to make an arrest for whatever reason. So there are a lot of interactions every year with the police. There's about 1,000, maybe 1,500 people killed every year. So you have about a 1 in 10,000 chance, assuming we just look at arrests, about a 1 in 10,000 chance of getting killed by the police. That is a very low probability of someone getting killed by the police. Very low. And you got to remember that, if you've watched any of the body cam channels, a lot of the people who get shot by the police kind of deserve it. They're not necessarily following instructions and surrendering peacefully. So that's stupid. I'm not saying the police are perfect. I would never say that. Any human institution is going to have imperfections. Any human institution is going to have imperfections. The police are necessary because there are bad people out there who do bad things, but the police are human. And so they're going to make mistakes. They're going to have bad days. They're going to they're going to make bad decisions, have lapses in judgment because they're human. And so you have to ask yourself, would you rather have a society with no law enforcement or a society where 1 in about every 10,000 arrests ends up with the police killing somebody? I don't know. Reasonable minds can reasonably disagree on that. Any killing is too much, But that said, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You find a better system of law enforcement. Maybe Chile de Castro's pillow truck or whatever the hell he was doing was talking about, whatever nonsense. Anyway. The next thing is people saying what happened. None of you know what happened. I don't know what happened. We have allegations made that were sufficient for an arrest and an arraignment. You haven't heard victims' testimony in court under oath. There's a difference between a phone call to the police and what the person might actually testify to if they choose to testify at all. I remember in law school, I think it was an evidence class, the professor showed an image for about maybe 10 seconds, maybe 5 seconds. I don't remember exactly how long it was. And then took the image down and started asking people questions about it. Like, what color was the jacket of the man holding the knife? What hand was he holding the knife in? What race was the man? What kind of haircut did he have? Did he have any facial hair? All sorts of questions. And it was shocking. I mean, and you got to remember, this is in law school. So there is a selection process where usually only above average individuals make it through each stage of that process. You know, graduating high school, there's a selection process. Getting accepted into college, there's a selection process. Graduating from college, there's a selection process. Taking the LSAT, there's a selection process. Getting accepted into law school, there's a selection process. Making it through the first year of law school to get to that class was a selection process. So you're dealing with above average IQ individuals who performed fairly poorly. Eyewitness testimony is not that great. It's one of the bedrocks of our legal system. It's oftentimes all you have, but it's not that great. So relying on a witness statement of, you know, in the heat of the moment, what they think they saw or whatever, giving only one side of the story is not, generally speaking, what you want to go on. As an attorney, it's often what you do go on because you have your client, they tell you their side, and that's the road you're marching down. But that doesn't mean that's actually what happened. I can't tell you how many times the version of events that my client tells me has been contradicted by the actual physical evidence. So be very careful. Be very careful rushing to judgment about what James did or didn't do in that situation until you actually start seeing some of the evidence come out. And hopefully we'll see some law in motion. Hopefully we'll see some trials so we get an idea of what's going on. But right now we're pretty much sitting in the dark. We know he was arrested. We know the police think they had probable cause. We know the prosecutor thinks they have probable cause. I don't know that there's been a probable cause hearing at this point. I don't believe there has been. But we don't even know if this is going to survive the probable cause hearing. It probably will, but we don't know it at this point. So just, you know, hold your horses. We'll get the information when we get it. If you want to live this soap opera in real life, in real time, it's going to be a wait. So just hang on. And then there's the people who are saying, you know, I hope James rots in jail. A lot of people saying that through various means. First of all, since we don't know that he actually did anything, other than, you know, what we saw on video. That's a premature thing to say. And you don't know how this is affecting James's family. There are other people who are involved in this. There are other people who have their own opinions and own values on what they would prefer the outcome to be. People who are actually affected by it. Victims. And you know what? James's wife might not want James rotting in prison forever. She might want him maybe out so he can earn money. Typically, one of the terms of probation is you have to get a job. A normal job. You know, where you work for a company and you generate income. And that income might be useful to James's wife. Income he would not receive in jail. It might be useful to his children so that they could have the things that they need that maybe mom can't provide on her own income. They might want to have their dad. The wife might want to have her husband in the home. You don't know that. You can't make that decision for them. You should let them figure it out. And whatever selfish reason you have, like what Show me on the doll where James touched you. I know a lot of people really hate auditors because they're assholes, and I get it. They're assholes. Generally speaking, they're assholes. I do tend to prefer auditors that aren't assholes when I do occasionally watch an auditor video. But most auditors out there in the past and maybe in the present, I'm not really that deep into this particular genre anymore. But most of them were assholes. And I get it. But being an asshole isn't a crime. You don't rot in jail for being an asshole. And if it was a crime, well, why aren't they in jail then? So why are you wishing jail on somebody that isn't a crime for doing something that isn't a crime? And if it is a crime and they've been arrested and run through the system, well, then they've got the punishment that the state thought that they deserved. So they've done their time. Like, why wish jail on James for something that he didn't do to you? That isn't a crime. And if you're wishing it on him for the DV, well, why don't you let him get convicted first? Why don't you let the victims give their victim impact statements and see what they want? I've had to deal with a lot of divorce domestic violence in my line of work, and it's never a good situation. It's terrible for the kids. It's terrible for the victim. And that's really, like, I am more concerned about them than I am about James. I hope James gets the help he needs, honestly. I really do. I mean, I do like the guy. I mean, I wouldn't like invite him to my house, but I'd go out and have a beer and a steak with him. Why not? He's Mormon. I don't know if he drinks beer. I know he drinks caffeine, which Mormons aren't supposed to do, but whatever. I'd go out and have a steak with him. I think they'd eat steak. I'm not very versed on Mormonism. I know they can't do caffeine. I don't think they can do alcohol. Anyway. But my real concern is his family. That's my real concern. You know, I don't know firsthand, but I know from having to deal with domestic violence, the effect it has on the family. And, you know, it's a complicated situation because the kids probably still love their dad and the wife still probably loves her husband. And who knows what a good outcome for them is going to be. And, you know, when I have a client in a DV situation, I listen to the client, what the client wants, and I push for the outcome that the client wants. And if the client wants reunification, well, I mean, depending on what the situation is, I might counsel against it. But if that's the direction my client wants to go, then that's the direction I push for. So I just, you know, I get it. You don't like James. That's fine. You know, everybody's entitled to their opinion. But I just think it's really callous and disrespecting of the victims to suggest what you think the outcome should be instead of listening to them and thinking what they think the outcome should be. And there was one other comment that I wanted to address. And I don't remember it off the top of my head. So instead of making a 20-minute long video where I sit in contemplation, I'll just say, have a great day. Try not to be an asshole. You know, just, yeah, I remember it. A commenter said that you have to be really low IQ to think that auditors have done anything to further First Amendment rights. And I guess I'm really low IQ because I remember Turner v. Driver. I remember covering recently a Pulliam decision, Justin Pulliam, who I find to be insufferable. But he got a decision where in the damages portion of the decision, the court lays out that the sheriff modified the rules regarding press based on his interactions with Pulliam. He did something wrong, and he changed the rules regarding press, who is considered press for these events to allow press into. So that right there is a recent example of auditors getting expanded rights. Turner v. Driver set the stage for expanded rights. You know, the court recognizing you have a right to film from a public place. Glick versus Knief. I mean, there's countless situations where someone with a camera records in a public place, the police overreact, and then the courts open it up. And even when the auditors fail, even when the auditors get arrested and lose, it still expands the knowledge of the boundaries of the First Amendment, because the First Amendment is kind of amorphous, and each case sets the perimeters, the limits of the First Amendment. So even when they lose, like when George Rogue Nation lost his criminal case about filming in a Social Security office, we didn't know, like, definitively that you couldn't do that, and now we do. Now there's a case on point. So auditors are very instrumental in helping the courts define the parameters. It puts the issues in front of the court so the court can make the decision. So they've been very helpful. When I started covering this stuff, when I started not covering it necessarily, but when I started watching this stuff in like 2013, I think, there weren't a lot of cases defining the limits of this. And we've been building cases that narrow the parameters because people go out there and film. So yeah, they do help. They do further First Amendment activity because it gives people who follow them a better understanding of what they can and can't do, and it takes away a lot of the gray area. So yeah, auditors have been helpful. I mean, they're assholes, generally speaking. Hashtag not all. That's the generalization, not the, exception to the rule. But they've done something that I think is of benefit. You can disagree. You're welcome to your opinion. And maybe I am low IQ. I don't know. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.